The Seed of Curiosity, 1856 to 1873. In the small town of Freiburg, in the Austrian Empire, now Przybor in the Czech Republic, on May 6, 1856, a child was born beneath a stormy sky. His name was Sigismund Shlomo Freud. His father, Jakob, was a wool merchant in his 40s, stern and reserved. His mother, Amalia, was almost 20 years younger, warm, protective, and immensely proud of her eldest son. Sigmund was her golden child, and she told him so often. Their household was modest, but books lined the shelves like silent guardians. Even before he could properly write, Sigmund would stare at them in fascination, imagining the worlds hidden behind their leather covers. His mother nurtured this curiosity, reading aloud by candlelight as he sat beside her, eyes wide with wonder. As he grew, so did his hunger for knowledge. He devoured classical literature, philosophy, languages. He began learning Latin and Greek by age 9. While other boys played in the fields, young Freud could often be found staring into the distance, deep in thought, sometimes even dreaming of solving the riddles of the mind. But life was not without hardship. The family moved to Vienna in 1860 due to Jakob's struggling business. The bustling, noisy capital was a sharp contrast to the quiet of Freiburg. Their apartment in the Leopoldstadt district was cramped, but Freud barely noticed. He had discovered the magic of ideas, and Vienna, with its growing intellectual spirit, would soon become the furnace for his genius. At school, his brilliance did not go unnoticed. Teachers remarked on his memory and sharp reasoning. By the time he entered the prestigious Leopoldstädter Communal Real Gymnasium, he had already decided on his path. He would become a doctor, not to heal bodies, but to understand the soul within. Into the Depths of Medicine and Mind, 1873 to 1886. In 1873, at the age of 17, Freud enrolled at the University of Vienna. Though he had set out to study medicine, his fascination quickly turned toward the invisible, toward thought, emotion, and memory. He spent hours in the lab of Ernst Brücke, a renowned physiologist, where he examined nerve tissues under a microscope. But Freud was not content with the limitations of the microscope. He wanted to peer deeper, beyond neurons, into the realm of dreams, fears, and forgotten desires. The soul, he believed, left footprints in the body, and if one looked closely enough, perhaps those prints could be read. Despite his intense scientific focus, Freud's academic journey was not swift. He took nearly 8 years to complete his studies, slowed down by financial burdens and the distractions of personal exploration. He translated volumes of philosophy and literature, even dabbling in poetry. But when he graduated as a doctor of medicine in 1881, he was no ordinary physician. He was already a thinker with questions far larger than biology could answer. In 1885, Freud was awarded a scholarship to study in Paris under Jean-Martin Charcot, a pioneer in the study of hysteria and hypnosis. It was in the lecture halls of the Salpêtrière Hospital that Freud saw something that would change his life. Patients whose symptoms, blindness, paralysis, tremors, had no apparent physical cause. Charcot called it hysteria and suggested the root was emotional, perhaps even psychological. For Freud, it was a revelation. The mind could wound the body. What lay hidden beneath the surface, he realized, could shape everything we are. The Birth of Psychoanalysis, 1886 to 1900. Returning to Vienna in 1886, Freud opened a private medical practice focused on nervous disorders. But something had shifted within him. The lectures in Paris haunted him. He began using hypnosis on his patients, hoping to uncover buried memories and traumas. Yet, hypnosis alone didn't satisfy him. It felt like touching shadows. He wanted to illuminate the whole room. Soon, Freud partnered with Joseph Breuer, a fellow physician who had treated a woman named Anna O., a patient plagued by convulsions, paralysis, and hallucinations. Through talking, Breuer had helped Anna trace her symptoms back to traumatic events. This case became the foundation for what Freud would call the talking cure. It was here, in the quiet of conversation, that Freud glimpsed the subconscious, a hidden realm where pain and desire dwelled. Freud broke away from hypnosis and began encouraging patients to speak freely, without censorship. He called it free association. What emerged startled him: fantasies, repressed memories, and childhood desires, often revolving around family. In 1899, he published The Interpretation of Dreams, a groundbreaking work that proposed dreams as wish fulfillments, disguised by symbolism and shaped by the unconscious. It was radical, it was bold, and it was just the beginning. Though mocked by many in the scientific community, Freud pressed on. He believed the human mind was like an iceberg, only a small part visible above water, with a vast, unseen force beneath, shaping actions, choices, even culture. He had found his mission: to map the mind itself. Conflict, Fame, and the Shadow of War, 1900 to 1923. As the new century dawned, Freud's theories began to ripple across Europe. He founded the Wednesday Psychological Society, a circle of thinkers who would later become the Vienna Psychoanalytic Society. His ideas were provocative: that the unconscious drove behavior, that childhood shaped the adult psyche, that dreams were coded messages from the mind's hidden depths. Among those drawn to Freud was a brilliant young psychiatrist from Switzerland, Carl Gustav Jung. Charismatic and visionary, Jung became Freud's protégé, the crown prince of psychoanalysis. Together, they traveled, lectured, and expanded the movement. Yet beneath their partnership, tension brewed. Freud's focus on sexuality, particularly the controversial Oedipus complex, disturbed Jung. Freud, in turn, saw Jung's mystical inclinations as a betrayal of science. Their ideological clash deepened. In 1913, the break came. Jung severed ties, and Freud was devastated. The split echoed like a psychological divorce, one Freud never fully recovered from. Meanwhile, World War I cast a dark shadow over Europe. Freud's sons went to war. His theories, once confined to salons, suddenly found new urgency. Shell-shocked soldiers returned from the front with trauma no bullet had caused. Freud's insights into the mind now felt vital, even prophetic. He wrote Beyond the Pleasure Principle and the Ego and the Id, exploring the drives of life, eros, and death, thanatos, forces that shaped not only individuals, but civilizations. But time was catching up. In 1923, Freud was diagnosed with cancer of the jaw, the result of years of cigar smoking. He endured over 30 surgeries, often without anesthesia, continuing to write, lecture, and think through excruciating pain. His body was failing, but his mind burned brighter than ever. Exile, Legacy, and the Final Days, 1923 to 1939. The final years of Freud's life were a mix of suffering, recognition, and resolve. Despite his worsening cancer, he continued to work from his home at Burgas, 19 in Vienna. There, surrounded by books, antiquities, and patience, he wrote some of his most profound works, including Civilization and Its Discontents, a chilling analysis of how modern society represses individual desires in the name of order. But outside his study, history was turning darker. In 1933, Adolf Hitler rose to power in Germany. Freud, a Jewish intellectual, watched with growing horror as books were burned, including his own. In 1938, when Nazi troops annexed Austria in the Anschluss, the threat became personal. Freud's daughter Anna was briefly detained by the Gestapo. Friends and colleagues fled. Freud resisted at first, unwilling to abandon his beloved Vienna. But under pressure from international supporters, he finally agreed to leave. With help from Princess Marie Bonaparte and the British government, Freud and his family escaped to London in June 1938. He was 82 years old, fragile but defiant. "I recommend the Gestapo to everyone," he famously joked on his emigration papers. In London, Freud spent his final months surrounded by his writings, his loyal daughter Anna, and the familiar statues of Egyptian gods and Greek warriors that adorned his study. Though weak and in pain, he welcomed visitors and continued to reflect on the mind, the world, and the future of psychoanalysis. On September 23, 1939, Sigmund Freud died by physician-assisted morphine overdose, as he had requested. He was surrounded by love and with dignity intact. The father of psychoanalysis was gone, but the world he had opened, the world of dreams, desire, trauma, and the unconscious, had changed forever.